Not all places are empty when the doors are locked. At Paranormal M, we go where others refuse, to abandoned buildings, cursed woods, and forgotten graveyards. Subscribe and take the journey with us if you can handle what's waiting. Breathe slow. The green man in the doorway. When I was a kid, I had trouble sleeping. I'd either stay up too late or I'd wake up in the middle of the night to strange sounds and whispers and creaks. Breathing that wasn't mine. I'd be too scared to move. Sometimes I saw shadows shift across the walls, and once I swear I saw a glowing green figure peek through the doorway of my childhood bedroom. I always slept with the door open, and I still remember exactly what it looked like. It glowed the same green as those plastic stars you stick to the ceiling, only brighter and unnatural. The shape was tall, vaguely human, but off somehow and wrong. My instinct was always the same. Stay completely still and breathe as quietly as possible. Pretend I was asleep. But that night something felt different. The fear didn't stay in my chest. It exploded outwards. I screamed. I screamed so hard and for so long it felt like I'd run out of air. I was screaming for help and for my grandma and for anything that could save me. But her TV was always on, loud enough to drown out my voice. It took what felt like forever, maybe 5 minutes, maybe longer, before she finally heard me. When she came down the hallway, the figure vanished like it had never been there. But I remember the way it stood, tall and watching. Too still, too human. After that, I didn't see it again that night. Eventually, I calmed down and fell asleep. But the memory stayed. Other times, the figures were children. Once, there was a boy and a girl. Not real children, but shapes of them. Silhouettes. Pure black, darker than the other room around them. So dark, they looked carved out of the night itself. I froze and barely breathing, hoping they'd vanish. But one didn't. One climbed on top of me. I remember the weight pressing down on my chest and my stomach. I slowly pulled a pillow over my face, trying to make it look like I did it in my sleep, trying not to react. Tears ran down my cheeks in silence, and I couldn't scream, I couldn't move, and all I could do was wait, and eventually it left. But by the time I turned 10, the shadows stopped visiting. I haven't seen them since I became an adult. But those 2 nights, they never faded. For years, I thought they were vivid nightmares. Maybe some kind of night terror. I thought maybe I was just scared or imaginative kid. But recently, I experienced sleep paralysis as an adult, and this time, there were no glowing figures. No shadow children, just silence. I woke up paralyzed, staring into the darkness, completely alert. I felt something in the room watching me and waiting. There's nothing there. I remembered how I used to breathe slow and quietly, and did the same now, just like I used to. Only now I realized something that shook me even more. All those years I thought I could move, but I could have. I wasn't physically trapped, I just believed I had to stay frozen. That stillness. That paralyzing fear. I chose it every time. That's because I thought it would protect me. Now, looking back, it's oddly comforting to know it was real, that I wasn't crazy, that what I saw and what I felt, it wasn't just my imagination, it was sleep paralysis. And knowing that now somehow makes it worse. Because it means the fear was never just a dream. It was me lying awake in the dark, waiting for something that might never leave. Generational Forest Kids. Surrey, BC, Canada. What does BC stand for? British Columbia? So, I told this story, albeit in far less detail, on my Tumblr on the anniversary of my sighting, but I figured if I was ever going to get answers, it'd probably be here. So, when I was about 7 years old, June 30th, 2010 to be specific, my Opa ditched me at the park for a couple of hours. And when I say ditched, I mean had a nap in his car in the parking lot and made it very clear that I was not to wake him. So I was unsupervised, as was common for my weird experiences. After a few hours of playing, I needed to sit down, both to catch my breath and to cool off. I ended up sitting underneath a tree, which was near the tree line. I don't think it really was a forest in a traditional sense, but to a child it may as well have been. A few minutes, maybe 10 or 20 of sitting there later, I started seeing something flickering through the trees. I stood up and got a bit closer because I just stopped wearing glasses and I couldn't see as well as I can now. But when I got closer, I realized the flickering I saw was actually a kid, about my age, tinted a little bit green, which I assumed was from the light passing through the leaves since it was so faint. Not long after I noticed the kid noticed me too. He, or it, smiled widely, but something just felt off. It felt like, well, how I'd smile at a friend, and more like how I'd smile at an ice cream bar, if that makes sense. The kid waved to me and started beckoning to me. The vibes were very off, so I hesitated, and then I started noticing more kids in the trees, around my age or older. Now sufficiently freaked out, I ran back to the playground. I waited to go home. I had a lot of nightmares as a kid, so I convinced myself I'd just fallen asleep and never mentioned it to anyone. Cut to last year. I was on the phone with my dad, and we started talking about weird stuff we experienced as kids. My Opa was his stepdad, so we had fairly similar childhoods. Always a one-upper, I told the story above without mentioning that the kids looked green. That's because I still thought it meant nothing, until he asked me if they were green. As his very first question in response to my story, turns out as teenagers he and a friend had also seen the same kids at that park. And to summarize what I was told, the kids had ended up following them home. My stepmom thinks they were probably harmless. I should have played with them. I very sincerely disagree, but I still don't really know what they were, and all I know for sure is that they weren't a dream. So, any theories? My house is haunted, and I think it's coming after me. Last night, literally last night. So I have to put my phone in the living room at midnight every night. Strict parents. So I came out to the living room to do so and tell my two dogs good night like I do every night. If I don't open my door all the way or shut it behind me, it'll be open all the way on its own. I don't know why, but it's pretty normal. Happened since we got this house. My door makes noise when it opens or closes, so I thought the noise I was hearing was my door opening, so I wasn't thinking much of it. I then go to the kitchen to take my allergy medicine, and I look down to all my room, and my door's completely shut. It's never shut on its own before. I was creeped out, so I went to open the door, and the moment I did, my TV turned on by itself. That's when one of my dogs perked up and ran to my room, and I usually don't allow my dogs in my room because their fur makes me itchy. But this time I was scared enough to let them investigate. I decided to let my dog sleep in my room because at this point I was scared, and the paranormal doesn't typically scare me, but this was my room where I sleep. So I called my other dog in there, and both dogs got in the bed, and I went back to the kitchen to take my allergy medicine, and that's when one of my dogs ran out of my room. He often doesn't like me to be alone in my room, so I attempted to get him and go back in there when I was ready, and he refused. He stood about 10 feet away from my door, growling with his neck hair raised. I was 3 feet from my door, trying to coax my dog into my room when a cord in the living room got yanked off the wall, hard, and my dog took off running and laid in his bed and wouldn't move. Finally, I went to my room, scared as fuck, and laid down with my other dog who stayed in there. Immediately, he curled up on my chest and didn't move the whole night, as if he was protecting me. This was very unlike him. The few times I sleep in my room, when I sleep on the couch, both dogs usually kind of huddle at my feet. Shit is getting weird. Recently, my house has gotten scary. You can see in my previous posts in the Reddit I've had some crazy paranormal activity. We moved in October last year, and it was quiet. Nothing out of the ordinary. I actually felt safer in this house than I did in the previous one. It's pretty much an open floor plan, so you can see almost the entire house when you walk in the door, save for the bedrooms, which have their own sort of hallways. After around a month in this house, we started noticing we could hear voices at night. It was when there was no TVs on or anything like that. Our previous house was haunted with similar occurrences, so it didn't really bother us much. And in a weird way, it made us feel more like at home. Things took a turn just a couple of weeks ago. I won't explain everything because it's in a post, but a long story short, things got ripped off walls and my door shut on its own. My dog was growling at my room door and wouldn't enter, and the other laid on my chest protecting me from something all night. Recently, I think I've been hearing or seeing a mimic, and I felt my mood change drastically. I'm always angry. Quick to anger and punching things, and that's not me. It's only happened in this house. I try to chalk it up to my teenage hormones, and I'm not so sure. Happened too suddenly, too aggressively. Especially making me so angry I want to punch things. Just now, a picture fell off the wall in the kitchen, almost hitting me in the face. I don't know what to do. That picture has been there since he moved in. It's never fallen before. I didn't touch the wall or the picture, and I'm worried something's coming after me, or trying to attach to me, or honestly, I don't know what to do. I had this dream as a kid, and to this day I get chills thinking about it. I just wanted to share a personal experience. A spiritual or religious dream I had when I was about 14 or 15. I'm 20 now, and it's a dream I've never forgotten. Every time I think about it, I get chills. Sometimes tears come to my eyes, and I don't even know why. And for context, I'm Muslim, and I'm religious today. But back then, I wasn't really thinking about faith or anything spiritual. I was just living my life. And this dream hit me so hard I didn't understand it then. I still don't fully understand why this dream and not another. It was night, and in the dream I was asleep in my bed, and everything felt just like real life. Suddenly I heard this huge noise coming from outside. Not just loud, but deep, and something powerful was happening. Something serious. It felt urgent, like the whole world was holding its breath. I got up and went to the window. I lifted the shutter and looked outside, and there were people walking down the street. I don't know how, but I somehow knew they were apostles. They were holding torches and walking in silence, filling both sides of the road, and in the middle of them was Jesus. He was crucified, but he was levitating, floating forward and slowly, right through the street like it was completely normal, but it wasn't. Yeah. The whole scene felt sacred and heavy, and there was the deafening sound, almost unbearable, like a wave pressing down on everything. It's hard to describe, but the closest thing I can compare it to is the sound of a scarecrow scene from Batman. What? Anyway. His head was tilted to the side, just like you see in the depictions of the crucifixion, and there was something around him like an aura. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt it was apocalyptic, like the end of the world was unfolding right in front of me. The atmosphere was so heavy it felt like time had stopped. I just stood there watching. I don't remember waking up or anything else, and that was it. But that dream has stayed with me all these years. Still don't know what it meant, and I wasn't even focused on religion back then. Left a mark on me. I still feel something when I think about it. I'd really like to hear what you all think of this. Feel free to share your thoughts or interpretations. Whatever your beliefs are, and let's just keep it respectful towards everybody and every religion. This happened to me. I don't know what it was. Hello, I'm here to share something that has haunted me since I was 5 years old. It's a true story that followed me across 3 homes and nearly a decade of my childhood. I stayed silent about it for years because no one believed me, and also because I was too terrified to speak. When I was about 5, we moved into a 1-floor house above a bungalow. My dad worked in another city, and only visited once or twice a week, and sometimes not so. It was just me and my mom most of the time. We slept in the TV room for a while, because the bedroom was under repair, and that's when I started hearing unexplainable sounds at night, like someone walking or whispering. Thought it was just my imagination. Later, when we moved into the bedroom, the sound didn't stop. One night, I had a dream where something, I'm not really sure what it is, something was chasing me. I tripped and fell and suddenly woke up and I saw my mom lying next to me. But something was wrong. She had wide-open staring eyes, a creepy, unnatural smile, and a burnt-looking face. I told myself I must just have the dark playing tricks on me. But I was terrified, and I reached over to hug her in my sleep, and she pushed my legs away over and over. The next morning, I asked my mom why she was smiling like that. She looked confused, and she hadn't done anything. She said that she was talking to the guard's wife that morning, like everything was normal. That's when I started wondering, was that really my mom beside me? Fear becomes my routine. I told my classmates about the sounds I was hearing at night. They just laughed, and I never mentioned the ghost or the burned face. I figured that if they didn't believe the sounds, how would they believe this? And from then on, I grew distant from my mom, and I became quiet and angry and paranoid. I would sleep without a thick blanket, even in South India's 50 degrees centigrade summer heat. I was drenched in sweat, but it was better than being exposed. Every night she would come, even when my dad was home. Every night I would feel her and hear her. I never told anyone, not a soul. And after 2 years of this, we moved to a new house, also above a bungalow, but this one had a neighboring room, too. I was hopeful that things would be better. For the first few days, they were, but then the same heavy, unshakable feeling returned. The dreams came back and the fear came back. The whispers came back. We left that house in just a few months due to termites, moved into a new apartment, and the one I still live in now. And I was 7.5 years old when we moved in. My dad and I slept in one room while my mom and the maid was unpacking some things in the lounge. And that night, the feeling returned, the one I had the first time, and I tried to ignore it. But after a few months, the sounds came back, only this time the whispers were right in my ears. Whenever I slept beside my mom or somebody and reached out in my sleep, the same thing would happen. My legs and arms would get pushed away, and I never looked. I didn't want to see who or what was lying next to me. I only slept to my left of my mom, but that didn't mean it was her, and I didn't dare check. But I'm sure that it wasn't my mom, and something that is unbelievable. But it never left the house and never followed me outside. During COVID, my mom had to stay in the hospital for surgery. I left at my neighbor's house and nothing happened, no whispers, no fear. But the moment I was back home and sleeping beside somebody, it began again. After my mom is back, I slept alone in my room, and for the first time in years, nothing happened. No whispers, no shadows, no pushing. Even after she returned and slept in another room, I slept alone and was safe. Then one day, my grandma visited and started sleeping beside me, and that feeling came back. And that's when I realized the ghost only came when I wasn't alone. I stopped reacting. I never opened my eyes. I just let it happen. Then one night, after my cousin moved in with us for school, maybe 8th grade and she was in 12th, we slept side by side. My mom was in another room. And suddenly I woke up in the middle of the night totally frozen. Sleep paralysis. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak. And hovering beside me was a massive black figure floating in the air. It wasn't a shadow, it was real, and it whispered straight into my ears. And then it began to press down on my neck, and I couldn't scream and I couldn't breathe. But somehow, my cousin woke up and she called my name. My mom came running, and in an instant, everything vanished. They found me, soaked in sweat, shivering in fear. And the next morning, I told them everything. Years of terror poured out in the dreams and the whispers and the pushing in the face. My mom contacted a priest, and he said, "There's a middle-aged woman who's been with your child since childhood." I couldn't believe it, and I still ask myself, why me? Why only me? The end or just a pause? In 2021 it stopped. No whispers, no paralysis, no ghost. But even now, the fear lingers and the memory still follows me. I don't believe in paranormal activities, and I'm an atheist, but what I experienced felt completely real. It wasn't my imagination or an illusion. I could feel everything that happened to me. But now I'm okay, and nothing's happened since 2021. Inexplicable incident. I've been encouraged to share an experience my wife and I had a few years ago. It's always haunted me, because there's no logical explanation to it. And I want to start off by confessing that I'm an atheist and I don't believe in ghosts and or the supernatural. I also don't believe in demons or angels. My wife, however, does, and she was born a Christian, is still a believer, and while she doesn't go to church, her parents are active churchgoers. From time to time, we both attend for special occasions. Despite being atheist, I'm not anti-religion. I want to point that out because in the context of what I'm about to share, I think it's relevant and also good for you to know. Like, I'm not somebody who points towards an experience as paranormal without a good reason. Also, my wife is very much into horror. She loves horror movies and horror books and runs a business creating horror curiosities, Ouija boards, as well as Victorian fairground-themed dolls. And again, this provides added context to what I'm about to share. So back in 2016, we moved into a house in South Staffordshire, England. The house was roughly 100 years old at the time, and a few weeks in, we started noticing bizarre things happening. We'd be sitting in the front room watching TV. We'd hear footsteps or what sounded like footsteps coming from upstairs. It was so loud we'd stop the TV or whatever we were doing, listening out, and we'd hear it again. I'd go and investigate, only for there to be nothing and no one upstairs, of course. There could only be floorboards creaking. That's the only logical conclusion. It's an old house, and floorboards are going to creak. Then we'd wake up and picture frames would be crooked, and the lid of the bin would be loose or even off. Lights would be on. Again, you could argue there are logical explanations for all these things. Anything could have caused a picture frame to move. Maybe one of us left the lid off the bin loose or not secure. Leaving a light on without realizing really isn't uncommon. Then there were the night terrors. My wife would wake up in the middle of the night, screaming, adamant she'd seen someone in the room or even floating above her head. But again, it could be argued she was dreaming vividly, so much she was convinced it was all real. And I could go on, but the point here is every paranormal-like activity in the house, there wasn't really always an argument to rationalize what was happening. And the likelihood is the logical explanation would be the accurate one. So, here comes the inexplicable thing. In our dining room, we had an old-fashioned bureau, and on the bureau was a sculpture of a hand. We'd put mail for one another in between the fingers, or if we received a card for a birthday or whatever, it'd go in between the fingers for a while, and to be honest, most of the time I wouldn't even notice. One evening, my wife asked if I'd seen the card I got for her, for when she got her master's degree. She said she'd had it on the hand sculpture, but it's not there anymore. And had I moved it? And like I said, I hardly noticed it, and I never even knew she'd put the card there. So we searched the entire room. I even lifted the bureau so my wife could look underneath. It was gone, nowhere to be seen. I joked because I said something along the lines of maybe a ghost took it. And this became a running joke, and whenever anything happened, we'd blame it on the ghost. But anyway, we moved on and agreed the card would have to show up at some point. Weeks passed, and nothing. The card wasn't anywhere to be seen. I'd even forgotten about it. So, it's coming up to my wife's birthday. And part of her gift being the horror obsessive that she is, I got us tickets to a ghost hunt at an old haunted pub. We've been to a few of these ghost hunts. Most of the time, it's a load of nonsense, but it's a laugh, and we meet some nice, if somewhat eccentric people there. And overall, it's a good experience. Even if we're standing in the dark for most of the time, calling out for a ghost that isn't really there. So we go to this ghost hunt, and a few things go on, and then we're all split into groups, and we have to use a Ouija board. I'm dubious, and I've done these on ghost hunts before, and because everybody wants to get spooked or experience something, I'd always felt like the glass was being moved on purpose, and I felt no difference this time, even when the glass came to me. When we'd asked, who does the spirit want to speak to? So I asked silly questions. Can't even remember what I'd asked, but until my wife said, "Ask if our house is haunted." So I did. "Is our house haunted?" The glass moved to yes. "Is it a friendly ghost?" The glass moved to yes. Then I had an idea. Did this ghost steal my wife's card? The glass moved to yes. Can I have the card back, please? The glass moved to yes. Can I have it back tonight, please? The glass moved to yes yet again. And I swear on my mother's life, we came home and a few hours later, in the middle of the dining room on the floor was my wife's card. And this is weeks and weeks after it was lost. So the floor had been swept and hoovered, and despite that, we searched so thoroughly for it that we would have noticed, or my wife would have definitely noticed for sure. This was about 7 or 8 years ago now, when we moved and we bought a cottage that's over 150 years old. But there's been zero activity, thankfully. But I can't explain or find a logical or rational explanation for what happened that night. It was really bizarre. I'm sharing this here because I'm curious as to what others think, or if anybody has had a similar experience. I saw a small white creature on my drive home from work. Can somebody help me pinpoint it? It was just after 11 p.m. midsummer. I have a long commute home, and I was not particularly tired that night, so I can't chalk it up to fatigue, and I was driving down a long rural side road, or I was going to say sidewalk, but side road. A rural side road, as they put it, with farm fields on both sides. And if you've seen roads in northern Canada, you know that the ditches and the sides are real deep. I had my high beams on because the stretch of road has no lights, so at night it's extremely dark. I've had deer jump out and cross the road before, but I saw something that was 100% without a doubt not a deer. Far up ahead on the right side, I saw a short white figure standing at the top of the ditch like deer do when they're about to jump, so I slowed down. And as I approached, I realized this thing was way skinnier than it should be, like starved skinny. Stood like a baby deer with the same body shape except its ribs were popping out. Its stomach was very thin. Like if you've ever seen a starving dog and had no tail and its head was almost totally round unlike a deer. And it didn't have any ears that I could see. This thing was pale white like a sheet of paper. Its eyes didn't glow. It wasn't the high beam reflection making it so white because, well, as I passed by, my headlights were no longer on it, and it was still white as snow. The scariest part was, I swear to God, I think like a human hand, like instead of a hoof or feet or a deer. It stared at my car as I passed by, and at first I gunned it, because the sight of it freaked me out so bad. And then I thought I should turn around to look for it, so I pulled a U-turn and drove back a ways, but definitely gone. So then I just continued on home, which was about another 20-minute drive. And this encounter bothered me the whole time. When I got home, my wife and sister-in-law and my brother were all standing on the front porch chatting, and I immediately told them what I saw and started Googling. I could find nothing, and they think I'm crazy. Any help identifying this creature I saw would be so appreciated. I still drive that road twice a day. I always scan that section of the road now, but I haven't seen it again. A dream I can't stop thinking about. I'm not saying this is paranormal, but it scares the crap out of me, and I just want to tell someone. I was standing in an old plantation-style house, and somebody I couldn't see was also standing behind me. 2 kids were shouting out of the window at somebody below them. I asked who they were shouting at. The voice behind me said that they're talking to their parents and they're dead. I said, but how can they see them? And just then another lady spoke to me. Somebody I didn't know was also there. An African-American lady, and I got the impression she was powerful and important. She said, "I will open your third eye so you can see the dead." And the voice behind me yelled back in a panic, "No, you do not want that. It is not worth it." To which the lady said, "It is a gift. You may decide when you are ready to receive it." Then I woke up and I was like, what the fuck was that about? Jesus Christ. Skeptical, but I love the intriguing part of it. I have a family of 4, Mom, Dad, my brother, and I. When this happened, my brother was 18 years old while I was 11. Brother had a very detailed and realistic dream of a nun trying to get into his bedroom through the window. That was while we were living on the 3rd floor of a building. The next day, my brother told this nightmare to my mom while drinking coffee in the kitchen. That was while I was asleep. And that night, I dreamed about the same nun trying to get through my window. I woke up scared and hugged the wall, covering myself with a blanket trying to get to sleep again. While I can swear I felt the matter moving like somebody just sat on it, at that point I was so scared that I jumped out of bed and when my parents just went to my bedroom to sleep. And the very next day, my mom asked me what I dreamed about. I explained to her the entire scenario. While she didn't really react to it, she knew me and my brother had the same dream. On the 3rd night, my mom dreamed about this nun too. She was getting home from work while taking the bus. An old woman, looking like a nun, sort of, got caught between the doors. My mom screamed for the driver to open the doors. When the nun lifted her head up and made contact with my mom, it was the moment that my mom recognized her, started screaming for the driver to drive off. After that, my mom didn't alarm me or my brother, and instead she booked for us a trip to a very famous church in my country. So we went on the trip and we went to a priest and all of us explained what we had dreamed of in detail. The priest kind of shrugged it off, saying it was the Saint Mary trying to get into our house to prevent anything harmful. I didn't really believe him because I knew the feeling I got during that night. It was not peaceful. But I was scared as fuck, and one thing is for sure. He did some chanting to quote-unquote cure me of the fear of the darkness. And since then, I've never ever felt scared in the dark ever again. To the point of today, and while I do fun activities with my friends, exploring abandoned buildings and places for the fun of it, all of my friends are scared as fuck. Well, I couldn't give a fuck about any of the ghost conspiracy. Moving from a dark room to a tunnel without hesitation. Skeptic, please convince me otherwise. As the title suggests, I'm a 28-year-old male skeptic, and I've tried several times to encounter the paranormal by visiting so-called haunted places in my home country. I visited everything from abandoned sites to abandoned churches, and even forts dating from World War II. But so far, I've not encountered anything out of the ordinary, and to be real, I was more scared about the reality of a homeless guy stabbing me to death than a ghost encounter or demon possession. After multiple trials, I ended up thinking this was just some sort of a cute little activity, where you visit old stuff with your friends, making fun of the most scared one of the group and nothing more. My thought process behind these quote-unquote supernatural activities is somewhat logical and intuitive. If ghosts and demons are real and they have the power to come into our lives in any shape or form, we should be able to at least see ghosts or demons roaming around in the streets in broad daylight. I mean, the world is so old and so many people died before us. Maybe on the very ground you're reading this Reddit on, so chances to not see a ghost if they were real is very improbable. And if the ghosts are real, judging by so many theories online, I just came to the conclusion you should not be bothered anyway, because there's no way they can directly interact with your self-being. Now, I get it. People love a good adrenaline rush when something extraordinary happens. And also the false dopamine rush of telling somebody a made-up story to see their reaction. But from a logical standpoint of view, either if the ghosts are real or not, you don't have to worry about it. Also, not to mention, our reality is a reflection of our perspective and environment. And if you consistently feed your brain with theories and encounters, sooner or later your imagination will provide you with self-induced thoughts and visuals, hardly too distinct from reality or illusion. Just like consistently watching horror movies and then dreaming about horror stuff. I also take into consideration the fear of unknown. Our brain is designed to be afraid of the unknown, the risk and the uncertain. And if you go into an abandoned building, for example, it is the best environment possible for your brain to tell you, fuck off out of here as soon as possible. As a defensive survival sort of automated instinct. And your brain is doing that by using, like, fear and imagination. And this is why consciously you start peeping around trying to look for the unknown in the dark, thinking there might be something lurking or watching you. But in reality, it's just your mind playing tricks on you to get you the hell out of there because of a defensive mechanism. I experienced my fair share of extraordinary cases, but everything had a logical explanation to some degree. And if you believe in ghosts and the supernatural, tell me why and how it affects your daily life. I saw my grandmother and grandfather die before it actually happened. This story is about my grandmother, my dad's mom, and my grandfather, my mom's dad. I somehow saw both of their deaths in my dreams before they actually happened. My grandmother, I was just 7 or 8 when my dad's mom passed away. That's right, I had a terrifying dream. I was being chased by something, a black, shapeless entity. I kept hiding at school and at home and at the playground. It felt like it lasted the whole night. And suddenly my grandmother appeared in my dream and she smiled at me, the same warm smile she always had. She took me to a door and told me to hide inside. Then she blocked the path of the dark figure chasing me. And I saw her get swallowed into the darkness and disappear. I woke up immediately to the ringing of her home landline. It was my aunt calling to tell us that Granny had passed away in her sleep. She had gone to bed normally and never woke up, but our houses were all close by. We rushed there, and I believe she came to say goodbye to me and save me from that nightmare one last time. In Hinduism, when somebody dies, we have 13 days of rituals where the soul is believed to be present among us. And during this time, the family sleeps on the floor together, fasts and prays for the peace of the deceased. My mom and aunt shared a mattress and blanket during those days, after Grandma passed. The same one that belonged to Granny. For a few nights, both of them felt the other was lifting the blanket slightly at night, letting cold air in. On the third night, they spoke about it and they were shocked. Neither of them had done it. They switched to another blanket the next day, and the cold sensation never returned. Probably it was my granny trying to get her blanket back. During those 13 days, my mom scolded me badly one day. Probably because I was acting out and missing Granny. And I do remember crying and calling for my Granny because I had this sort of pit in my stomach missing her. After a few months, there was a local ritual where a medium calls the spirit of the deceased to ask questions about the afterlife and their needs for the journey ahead. You're not allowed to cry during the session, nor it affects the medium's body. Everything was going normal. My uncles and aunts were talking to Granny's spirit one by one. All the answers given by the medium felt generic and obvious. and some people were suspicious about the medium as being authentic. Until it was my mom's turn to speak, and suddenly the medium, possessed by Granny's spirit, got angry and shouted, "How dare you scold my baby in front of me? Don't you dare make him cry again. I love him, but now I can't hold him when he cries." Then the medium, breathing heavily at this point, mellows down and starts explaining the same in a more polite way, and this shocked everyone. No one knew about the scolding except my mom and me. People who thought the medium was fake changed their minds, and the spirit also mentioned the exact time Granny passed, 3 to 3:30 a.m., and described the reapers that came to collect her. My grandfather, my mom's dad, this happened many years later, during the COVID lockdown. My mom's father was hospitalized in a COVID center, but my mom hid this from me because I was away in another city for my final university exams. And a few days before his death, I had a dream that felt like I was living life after his passing, people mourning him and his family struggling financially, and the emptiness of his home, and I felt it so real I woke up with a headache and couldn't tell it was real for 10 minutes. My mom's auntie fought an entity and went mad. This happened to my mother's aunt a long time ago in a rural part of India. It was told to me by my mom and grandparents. Back then, girls were married all very young, and my mom's aunt was probably in her early 20s at the time, with the son around 4 or 5 years old. There was a family wedding happening a few villages over, and her mother had cooked lots of delicacies and packed some wedding ritual items that needed to be delivered ahead of time. She asked her eldest daughter, my mom's aunt, to go 2 days early and deliver everything. She agreed and picked up and packed up goods from her mother's house on the way, took her son with her, and started walking toward the wedding destination. At that time, people traveled by foot through forests and villages, as there were no buses or phones. The walk was around 3.5 hours. While crossing through the forest near a small brook, she saw a woman standing far away, dressed in full red bridal attire and wearing a lot of gold jewelry. The woman was smiling at her, and my mom's aunt assumed she was from like a village ahead, also headed to a wedding. She smiled back politely, and the woman suddenly approached quickly, and according to my aunt, looked incredibly beautiful and well-dressed. She came near and said, "I am barren. Give me this boy. I'll raise him as my own." My aunt laughed it off and continued walking. But the woman rushed ahead and blocked her path again, and this time saying, "Take all my gold, just give me the child." And getting irritated, my aunt hurled some curses and walked past again, but this time the woman leapt into the air, landed ahead of them, blocking the path for the third time. And this is when my aunt realized something was wrong. The woman's breathing grew heavy, and she started growling like an animal. Her skin turned pale and rotten. Her eyes became pitch black, and there was no white in them, just black pupils. A horrible smell started coming off of her, and the scariest part is my mom's aunt's son suddenly began trying to break free from her grip, saying he wanted to go with the woman. He scratched her arms, trying to pull away with all of his strength, and in her bag, which was tied to a bedsheet like a backpack, she remembered she had carried a chimta, an iron tong used to make music at weddings and religious functions. Desperately, she pulled it out and began attacking the entity with it, and to her surprise, it burned her. The creature growled and stepped back, kept blocking the path and crying and shouting for help, and my auntie just dragged her son with one hand and kept hitting the entity with the other, till she reached the end of the forest. A demonic entity almost took my grandmother. This one's about my maternal grandmother, and honestly, it's probably the most intense story I've heard, firsthand from my family. There's a lot of backstory, but I feel like it's important to understand the main story. So here we go. My mother was born in a village that, as crazy as it may sound, was literally a dumping ground for dark entities before it became a village. Here in India, especially in older rural areas, exorcisms aren't always about banishing spirits. Most of the time, the priests or tantrics, occultists, just capture the spirit and leave it to bind into a remote place, hoping it doesn't harm anyone. That area my mother's village sits on was one of those places. A proper deep forest setup, flowing brooks and thick trees, almost no sunlight hitting the forest floor in some spots, and a reputation for being paranormally active for decades. Even today, it's considered secluded. You either have to walk 20 or 30 minutes from the main road through narrow trails, or take this inbuilt Kakcha road to the locals. It's full of loose stone and deep turns, impossible for normal cars to cross unless it's a tractor or a sturdy jeep. Now, my grandfather's mom, or my mom's dad's family, was one of the first 3 families that decided to settle in that region. And they were farmers, and they owned a chunk of unused forest land nearby. It was earlier used for wood collection or to gather grass for cattle. Their old home was falling apart and would have eventually led to property disputes. So the siblings split the land and built new houses there to avoid future issues. Once people saw someone settling, a few more families came too, but soon after then, really aggressive. Windows shattering at night and hearing laughing and crying in the forest, and illnesses after, any encounter with no medical cause, and cattle dying for no reason and blood stains outside homes. Random dead animal meat dumped near the doorstep or something. And something knocking on their door past midnight asking for food or screaming or crying or pleading, and all the families were terrified. They reached out to priests and spiritual people, but most of them backed out as soon as they learned the scale of it. It wasn't one entity, but possibly hundreds. Eventually, one respected priest agreed to help, suggested the best long-term solution: to bring a powerful deity into the area. Since the resources were tight, they couldn't build a full temple, so instead they carved an idol of Lord Hanuman in a sort of giant rock located in my grandfather's land. That same idol is still there today, and the priest and his group came and performed pran pratistha, a ritual where the energy and consciousness of a god is invoked and placed into the idol, turning it into a living deity. After the ritual was, done, things calmed down significantly. The darker forces were suppressed, and some minor stuff still happens occasionally, but that insane level of paranormal activity stopped. Years passed. My grandfather got married to my grandmother, and they had kids. Life was peaceful, until one night, roughly 35 to 40 years ago. My nanny stepped out of the middle of the night to relieve herself. Back then, homes in rural India didn't have indoor toilets. She was doing her business near the edge of the forest when she suddenly heard a laugh, a disturbing non-human laugh. Then a woman's voice. "Should I come there? Should I?" "Okay, I'll come. I'm coming." Before the voice could finish, my nanny ran like hell back into the house. She didn't tell anyone about it because my nana, my grandfather, wasn't home. He worked far away and only visited once every few months, and that night she slept scared alone with the kids. By morning, she still had high fever. Nothing unusual showed up, but this intense fatigue, and she kept getting sicker day by day. My mom, who was the eldest kid in high school back then, ran around to call the local doctor, more of a local healer than a real doctor. They tried some meds and home remedies and nothing really worked, but by day 2 my mom wrote a letter to my Nana explaining the situation and asking him to return. It took him a week to reach home, and by that time Nanny was really sick and weak, and they took her to the hospital. Tried different medicines and tests, and nothing worked. Even after trying multiple doctors and spending a lot of money, no one could explain what was happening. And eventually, Nana decided to take Nani with him to the city where he worked, so he could care for her full time. But this created a problem. All the kids were left alone, and someone had to manage the house and the fields and, well, cattle. That's when my mom stepped up. She dropped out of school to handle everything. She was maybe 15 or 16, because farming was their only income and there's no other option. Months passed, Nanny's condition only got worse. She stopped eating and lost weight rapidly, couldn't get up and couldn't talk much. My Nana used to write letters, but also hid the seriousness of her condition from the kids. But word got around, and villagers who visited them in the city would come back and tell others how bad Nanny looked, how it seemed she wouldn't make it. That's when one acquaintance suggested to my Nana that this was not a medical issue, it was spiritual. He told him to go see a man who sat outside a very famous Unaman temple in the city, a well-known occultist. They did, and that man told my grandparents everything. But according to my Nanny, she hadn't told anybody about that forced encounter, not even my Nana, and had completely forgotten it until the priest brought it up. Like the memory had been wiped. He told her that the entity had heard that night had tried to reach her, but was stopped by Hunaman himself, who had placed himself between her and the demon. He said the only reason you're still alive is because of him. He then gave Nanny a small packet of powder and told her to eat it immediately. Okay. Within minutes she started vomiting, but what came out wasn't normal. It was thick black tar-like vomit. She felt like 50 kilograms lighter and immediately regained strength, and on the way back home, while waiting for the bus, she told my Nana how hungry she was. She took her to a small stall nearby to get her curry rice, and she ate enough for 3 people after months that day. She recovered almost completely within a week, and they came back home soon after, and my mom rejoined college after taking a year's gap. That idol, the one carved on stone, is now enclosed in a proper temple that his villagers later built together through donations. Still stands there. People worship there daily. Stories of people from my family who saw the dead. This is the story of an encounter that happened with my mom's cousin's brother when he was young. If not wrong, he should still be around 45 now. And this incident happened right after he finished college, so about 23 years ago. My uncle wasn't very into academics, so barely after passing college, he started working as a bus conductor. He still works in transport and owns and drives his own bus now. And this happened during his early years in the job, when he was working for a long-distance bus service. One night after shift, he was dropped off at a nearby city bus stand that was closest to his village. And this village, by the way, has a rich and terrifying history of paranormal and occult. I've described that in detail in older posts. He was dropped at the station around 1:30 or 2 a.m., and normally he'd be sleeping on the bench at the station, wait for the next day's bus. But that night, he wasn't sleepy and decided to just walk home. It would take 2, maybe 2.5 hours on foot, and since there were only 2 buses to the village daily, both daytime, walking made sense. Being a local, he knew all the shortcuts. As he was descending into a valley area on one of these forest trails, he spotted somebody standing near the bottom, and when he got closer, he realized it was his elderly neighbor, a well-known tantric, a local occultist. This old man was known for coming into secluded places late night to dispose of the negative energy or spirits he removed from his clients. My uncle knew about him, and he wasn't really alarmed, and he was just greeting him warmly. The old man, though, was concerned. He asked my uncle why he was walking through the forest at that hour. Then, after telling him to do this again in the future, he said my uncle was lucky to find his company. And after some chit-chat, they decided to walk home together. The old man kept insisting that my uncle walk ahead of him, saying he had luggage in both hands and didn't want to slow him down. But my uncle refused, said the old man walked with a stick and was slow and would get left behind. And after some back and forth, the old man finally agreed and they went home, laughing and gossiping the whole way. Once they reached the village, my uncle's house came first. The old man's house was further down a small street. He asked my uncle to drop him further since there were still stray dogs around. But my uncle, just tired and carrying stuff, said he'd watch from a distance to make sure he reached safely. And he also pointed out the light in the man's house was still on, so his wife must be awake, waiting for him. The old man seemed to be a little bit unhappy, but said okay and walked on. My uncle stood and watched him enter the house boundary and then left. My mom's grandmother accidentally summoned a demon. This story has been in my family for generations and resulted in creation of a strict rule in my family. So, decades ago, my mother's maternal grandmother was newly married, really young, and lived in a village where almost every household had cattle. The villagers had a system where one man from each household would take all the village cattle to the forest to graze and bring them back before nightfall. My great-grandmother had a special bond with one of their newborn calves, a buffalo named Ranja. He was really attached to her too, and would follow her around like a puppy and respond to her calls. And when he was old enough, he went to the forest for the first time with the herd, but when the cattle returned that evening, Ranja was missing. My great-grandmother panicked and, through her mother-in-law, told her to wait for the men of the house to return. Well, she didn't listen, and the village went on a cliff overlooking a valley, and across the valley was a forest. She went to the cliff's edge and started loudly calling out, Ranja, come here," hoping the echo would reach the forest. After a few calls, she heard a response, Ranja's voice calling back from the forest. Though with each reply, his voice got louder and closer, and the pace was unnaturally fast, like it was jumping from the forest to the valley bottom to right near her. Then she looked down and saw something she would never forget, a buffalo-like creature standing upright like a human in the field below her, with eyes glowing red like headlights and breathing like it was furious. Let out a terrifying roar in Ranja's exact voice. She collapsed in fear. Just then her husband, father-in-law, and some villagers arrived with torches. They saw the same creature. That was before it jumped into the valley and vanished. Everyone was so shaken they didn't go into the forest that night. The next morning, a search party found Ranja's bloodied body near the grazing grounds. His head was missing. Ever since that night, our family had had a strict rule: never call anyone by name after dark, especially while shouting for them, because something else might hear you and come instead.
Poster Fire, the Bot Hell Hell House. Spring 2014. Not that many poltergeist survivors can say that they witnessed seeing a poltergeist flee the scene of a crime. By crime, I mean arson. Well, I can. On one of the most horrifying events I faced while living in the Bot Hell home was the day the poster caught fire in my office. Recap. Tina and I had witnessed a lot of activity in the weeks leading up to the poster catching fire. I'm talking about bar stools being thrown. Our bedroom light was going off and turned back on by itself in the middle of our sleeping. Loud bangs, loud footsteps, door slams, and yes, one Bible catching fire. All of that happened within a week of the story I'm about to tell you. The advice given to us by friends and family was to smudge the house. The internet said the same thing. Smudging lessens the activity, quote unquote. But let me tell you, smudging never lessened the activity. Not in our house. It made it worse. This story is proof of that, in fact. The night before the poster caught fire, I asked Tina if she would feel comfortable smudging the house. Tina's an excellent smudge person. Tina's more thorough, you could say, than me. She smudges every nook and cranny. The next day, we woke up and got ourselves ready for work. Nothing unusual about that, except the house was still smelling like burnt sage, which I thought was good. Your house should smell like sage if you smudged the night before. I later found out that smudging before going to bed is dangerous, extremely dangerous. I compared smudging before going to bed to kicking an open fire ant house bed before having a picnic. Tina and I got up that morning, and we did what we always do. We got ready for work. The feeling of being watched is lessened. 30-odd minutes later of us waking up, Tina walks up to me and kisses me goodbye. Now it's just me in the house. The only thing on my mind now is beating Seattle traffic. I gotta get out of this house and get to work. A few minutes after I stepped into the shower, it happened. The devil arrived. Every fire alarm in the house starts going off. I'm standing in the doorway of my bathroom, half dried off, thinking, oh shit, it is happening. I knew right then that something was up. I didn't know what specifically, not yet anyway. Something's up though, and it's not good. I remember running through the master bedroom and reaching our bedroom doorway, and that's when I saw it. I feel a large mass run right by me. I can't see what ran past me. I can only feel it, and it was huge, taller than me and wider than me. All I could hear besides the fire alarms going off was this loud stomping sound. My eyes and ears turned toward the direction of the stomping noise and followed it downstairs, and suddenly, the front of the house opens wide and slams shut. That is it. The door just opens wide on its own and slams shut. That's when my brain says, "Give chase, Keith, give chase." I'm thinking, give chase to what? I still haven't determined if someone was even in the house. I haven't even seen anything. The door just opened and closed on its own. What am I chasing? So, I do what my brain says. I run down the stairs and reach the front door. I should be able to get a good glimpse of the intruder as he's leaving the house. I throw my hand on the front doorknob and nothing happens. The front door does not open. Correction, though. The front door doesn't budge, not even a centimeter. I must have fought with the doorknob for about 2 seconds before realizing that I had a fire to deal with. Smoke is billowing from my office upstairs. I run to my office and there it is, ladies and gentlemen. There is a fire. The wall behind my computer desk is on fire. The posters specifically. How many seconds could have transpired between the fire alarm going off and where I'm standing now? Maybe 30 seconds? The first thing I do is kill the fire and toss my damp towel over it. The fire didn't put up a fight, it was just gone. I turn up and run downstairs again. The house is filled with smoke. I get to the front door and try to open the front door again. Nothing. The door will not budge. This is the same door I saw open less than a minute ago. The doorway felt like it had been welded shut. The fire alarms are still wailing in the background. I can taste the chemicals from my burnt poster in my mouth and nostrils. And that's when it dawned on me. The house is not the one under attack. I am. Think carefully about it, Keith. The next few decisions could be your last. What are you going to do? I was in shock at this strange stage, because I remember the events vaguely at this point. Suddenly, I'm on the phone with the 911 operator. I'm screaming at her that the house is on fire, and she's maintaining her level of professionalism in the process, asking me in a calm voice, "What's the address?" Every time I utter my address through the phone, enormous amounts of static break out. I'm talking about loud electrical interference, not just static. We go through this, "I can't hear you, can you repeat the address?" routine for about 30 seconds. Finally, she gets my address, and in doing so, lets me know that the fire department's on the way. I hang up and call Tina. Thank God she answers. Tina can hear the fire alarm screaming through the phone. I blurt out for her to come back home. Come back home. The house is under attack, and I hang up. The front door, for reasons I can't explain, finally opened. It opened within seconds of the fire department arriving. How ironic. The firemen dart in and, at my urging, proceed up toward the office. They said I did a good job putting the poster fire out. Tina runs into the house a minute after they arrived and grabs me. I was half naked and shaking like a leaf because all I could remember was Tina throwing blankets over me. I'm shivering and shaking like a wet puppy. I'm not afraid to admit that I was crying and quivering like a baby, too. You would have thought somebody had doused me in a tub of ice water, cubes and all. That's how cold I was. The fire department never could determine what caused the fire. Tina and I knew. This is the second fire incident that we've experienced. Note, there will be 2 more fire incidents in that house in the coming weeks. When the fire department left, all Tina and I had now was each other. The demons who did this are still here, snickering at us. Whatever ran past me in the upstairs hallway had to have been the ringleader. I'll always remember what I felt as it ran past me. Evil, diabolical evil. Neither of us could think of a solution to our problem at all. The only thing left to do now is to contact the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church that up to this point has been ignoring us, giving us the runaround. That's the only logical thing to do now, right? Who else can help us? Tina and I looked at each other and reached the same conclusion. We're marching down to the local parish office, and we are not leaving until someone sees us. Ghost called cousin by name. This incident happened a few years ago. Let me explain the backstory, which might be the reason for what happened. So my mom's brother, along with his wife and 2 children, moved into a rented house a few years ago, and they've already moved out because of obvious reasons. Someone had died in that house of unknown reason a few months back, and they moved in. And one of my uncle's friends died of cardiac arrest while asleep a month after that. So that day, well actually the night, me and my 2 cousins were playing video games late night in the same room my uncle's friend died in, and in the same bed. The lights were turned off, and it was around 12 a.m. when I heard someone say, "Rachel." The voice sounded like a middle-aged male and had a serious tone to it. That's my cousin's name, and I thought I was hallucinating as I was sleepy, but then I see both of my cousins looking at each other. Both of them heard the voice as well. Rachel went to the door and to the backyard and didn't see anybody. We told our parents about this, and the next time, they didn't believe us either. A few months later, my cousin heard scary female voices, footsteps and thuds to the door and window while he was home alone. I've always been curious about this, and finally found the subreddit where apparently I could find answers. Just had a genuinely spooky moment at an old Cold War bunker. This place is not known to be haunted, nor are there any deaths associated with it, as far as I know. It's open to the public and maintained, so not an oozy, cold, and dark ruin. I was standing in a hallway outside of a telephony museum room, and my friends were still poking around inside. I was looking at a blueprint map of the facility. In the wall opposite the door to the room where the fluorescent light above me just went off. None of the many other lights in the corridor were out. Every one of them were working fine. I chalked that down to maybe a random failure. A few moments later, most of my friends exited the museum room, but one stopped at the doorway, noticing a hole in the floor beside the door, and suggested I come and take a look. So I re-entered the room to investigate it with him. The door closed behind me and we were alone. Just as we were about to peer down the hole, a woman's scream came from behind us, in the corner of the room that was filled with old 50s and 60s technology and floor-to-ceiling high cabinets full of wires. Nowhere for anyone to hide. All fully lit, so no dark spaces. We both head toward the scream, both looked around toward the source at the same time. Now there was a video running on TV explaining the uses of the tech in the room, a typical monotone instructional archive type of deal. But I cannot see why they have a random scream in a portion of the video that was explaining how the telephones worked. In other rooms, they do show films of old public information reels. There is some screaming in those, but you can't hear them outside of their designated areas, and certainly not in the room we were in. I've been to this bunker twice before and never heard the scream, nor had a light wink out above me. This did freak us out a bit. The rest of the group didn't really think much of it as we explained what we had experienced, and the friend that was with me does not entertain any notion of ghosts or spirits or anything like that. Hatman, window, and curtain appear as shadow in TV. So this just happened tonight. I can't find an explanation anywhere. My fiancé and I were watching TV and shadows started appearing in the TV screen. At first, nothing distinguishable. It just looked like a backlight going out. Eventually, it's a very obvious silhouette of a person. I paused the TV at a scene where the screen was totally black. In the TV, there's a shadow image of a human from the waist up, wearing a fedora. You can see the coach behind them as if they're sitting on it. To their right is our window and the window curtain. In the shadow, the curtain is pulled all the way to one side. Our curtain is currently drawn, closed. I tried changing what we were watching, but it remained. Both of us saw the exact same thing, so this wasn't one of us seeing stuff. I then turned off the TV, turned it back on, and the image was gone. But the Roku was flickering between the menu and the TV, showing no signal. I restarted the Roku, then everything went back to normal. I saw the cloaked shadow person once as a child, but that was over 30 years ago and in a different house. She never has. The difference here that's freaking me out is I didn't see them directly, but as a burned out blacklight type image in the TV screen that disappeared after I power cycled the TV and Roku. My experience from about 12 years ago. Anyways, the first night something strange happened was after my surgery around August, as I was about to enter 5th grade. I get home and I was about to go to bed with my parents, and they ask me if I can walk up the stairs, and I say no, so I struggle. But honestly, it was just because I prefer sleeping on the floor than the actual bed, and I still do. Around maybe 3 or 4 in the morning, I randomly woke up, and I hear a laughter coming towards a closet. I kind of was hoping it was one of my mom's Halloween decorations, going off maybe because my mom was obsessed with Halloween and had a bunch of decorations. But I'd say maybe like 5 minutes later, I hear some scratching on the couch directly behind me. Then my dad walks down maybe about 30 minutes later to get ready for work, and I tell him what happened. Just for him to search the house and find nothing. Things go on for months, and it's always little things like seeing shadows as I'm in the shower, things like that. There was also this one time where I was hanging off the ladder at the top bunk upside down, and that was some scary thing to wake up to. Another time when I'm asleep, I wake up to me basically punching myself, or punching a shelf. It's hard to discern. Me punching the shelf I can understand as maybe being an involuntary movement, but hanging upside down from my bunk bed seems pretty hard to do, and that was also the only time that it's happened to me. I'm not entirely sure if these two instances really had anything to do with what I experienced, but when it happened, it just felt super strange to me. Okay, so now the last thing to ever happen to me, or at least last thing I noticed, was the most strangest thing to happen to me in my entire life. I can't really remember around when it happened, but basically I'm lying down in my bed, and as I'm trying to sleep, all of a sudden my vision goes black. I was confused and scared, thinking I went blind as I knew my eyes were wide open. And then about 10 seconds later, my vision basically turned into something like infrared vision. The whole room was blue except for a guy who looked like they were sitting down on a box in my closet. The door was closed and I wanted to get up to open my door, or at least make a run for downstairs. People have told me that it couldn't have been sleep paralysis, but I had full control over my body, so to me, definitely agree with them that it doesn't make sense. I was just too scared to do anything, so I pretended to be asleep, and after maybe 10 minutes later, my vision just went back to normal. Playful spirits at my old workplace. I used to work at a retail pet store. Many people don't like that I sell purebred puppies. I worked in the kennel area taking care of the puppies every day, feeding and grooming them, giving them medicine and weighing them and taking temperatures, the whole 9 yards. I'd heard before from one of my managers that a couple playful spirits roamed the building, especially whenever it was quiet, like after closing or in the morning before customers arrived. Occasionally things falling off shelves when they were pushed against the back wall, a pen that kept falling out of the pencil holder, and giggling when no one was around were the stories that I'd been told. A couple of weeks after hearing about this, I had my first paranormal experience in the store. And I want to preface this by saying the way the store is built. The kennels for the puppies are built into a long wall that divides the retail section of the store from the work area. I was closing up the kennel area and I was about to take out the trash, and I saw a man standing in the retail section of the store, looking into one of the kennels, looking at a corgi and a Shiba Inu that we had at the time, who were playing. I was thinking that it was my manager. I pushed through the doors into the main area, and I went to go ask him a question about my shifts, and he's gone. I look across the room and he's down the hall in the office, and there's no one else in the store besides my coworkers who had been in the back with me, and the cashier who was also in the office. I asked my manager if he had just been looking at the puppies, and he said no. Throughout the rest of my time there, I heard giggling and I saw a few running across the floor. But no one was walking through a curtain, and a human shape was visibly underneath the curtain as it passed through, and I had a pen cap fly off the table as soon as I set it down. Definitely not the worst part of the job. That was actually one of the only perks, actually. Fuck that job, it was terrible. Not too sure how to feel about this. Myself and my partner were chilling together in our room. I was playing some PS5 whilst she was replying to voice notes. Then suddenly, we both hear a really loud booming TV sound coming through the wall. Initially, for about an hour, we thought it was our neighbors. However, I then went to grab a snack from downstairs and the sound became much louder, and I realized the sound was coming from inside the house, more specifically in my mom's room. Trouble is, my mom hasn't been home for a few weeks as she's been away looking after a family member, and we're the only ones in the house. So essentially, the TV turned on, changed volume, and changed channel on its own. I should mention, it only changed channel when I walked into the room. Also, as I'm writing this, I heard a massive bang directly below us, which was loud enough to make me jump out of my skin. I've gone downstairs and investigated every inch of the house, and there's no one here. I even checked the shed outside. The only thing of note that I found was pliers outside on the back door. However, these belonged to us. I checked out the front as I expected there maybe to be somebody there, but nobody. In terms of the TV, it's pretty old. It's not capable of an internet connection, and the remote has to be directly pointed at it in order to operate the TV, which it wasn't when we found on my mom's pillow. I can only assume the TV's potentially becoming faulty in its old age, but still, it's pretty eerie. Trapped in a haunted house. Me and my girlfriend like to go on midnight drives. We were driving our usual routes down some country roads when we passed 3 oddly large, sharp turn signs. Well, my girlfriend said, "Wait, there was a road there, let's go down it." Because there was nobody out at this time, I was able to reverse back and go onto this road, and it was exactly 2:22 a.m. It was one of those narrow farm roads. It seems to go on forever. When we finally got out into the main road, we saw some eerie orange streetlights. The town name sign was a lot more bold than others. Something about it made us feel uneasy. Upon entering the town, we laughed about how creepy it looked, all empty with orange streetlights. Suddenly, as we're driving through at around 15 miles an hour, we hear what sounded like a knock at the bottom of the car. It definitely wasn't just a rock or a stick bouncing off the car. It was a distinct knock. We sped out of town, soon again laughing it off. However, little did we know that wasn't the last time that we'd see this creepy town. We attempted to get away from it to go back to our usual route, but we soon realized that no matter which way we turned, it led us right back into the town, and every single time driving past the same exact place. And we always heard that knock. We must have drove through the town at least 6 times before we managed to get out. When we finally got back home, the first thing I did was Google the town. To our horror, the official Wikipedia page of this town states that the town is haunted by 4 ghosts. The strange thing is we've never seen that town before. We haven't seen it on any of the street signs. Yet now, every time we go on our usual country roads, we see it on every sign, almost like we unlocked a new area in a game. We've basically gone back a couple times since, but now it seems a lot more lively and normal, even at night. We've also tried to find the farm road that first led us to it, and it's been a few months since all of it happened, yet we still can't find that farm road. It's like it disappeared. There's a man who took care of me, and he's back. What do I do? So ever since I was a baby, there's been a man protecting me, but this man isn't really human, if that makes sense. I don't know if he's a ghost, a demon. All I know is he's protecting me. The first appearance of this man was when I was just a baby. My parents were having a party. Parents downstairs in the backyard drinking. Kids and teens are upstairs in the living room on their phones or playing video games or with toys. Me, the baby, is currently in my crib, alone in the dark door. A lady was going upstairs to use the bathroom. My mom asks if she will check up on me, and the lady said that she would. For some context, this lady was sober and didn't like alcohol, so she goes upstairs checking on me first. Upon opening the door, she notices a dark figure of a man standing over my crib, watching me as I sleep. The lady closed the door and ran downstairs to alert everybody. My dad and Tios are running upstairs to get me as fast as possible. Upon entering the room, he's gone. Not a trace of anybody being in the room. The adults ask the kids, and they all say that nobody had been upstairs other than for them and some people using the bathroom. From then on, everybody kind of left and just ended the party. This wouldn't be the last time I'd see him, though. I remember this story very vividly. I was around the age of 4, and while running upstairs, I busted my head so hard my skin gashed open, gushing out strong amounts of blood. And that's when I saw him. He looked to me and to my older brother and waved his arms in front of him. With no avail of getting up, he turned and he goes to me and helps me up, and I'm able to get my brother's attention. Later, I wake up in the hospital. I didn't mention the man to anybody. After reviewing, I ended up with a small stitch on my head. The doctor found it a surprise that I only had such a small scar. And from then on, I wouldn't see the man in real life for another 2 years. I'm 6, and I'm walking across the street. As I'm walking, a car comes out of nowhere and it's about to hit me. Before the car can hit me, there he is again, the man standing in front of the car, as if stopping it somehow. I was interrogated by the police as the person was speeding, didn't have a plate on his car, and almost hit me. I tell them everything, and I don't mention the man. That night and for 3 years, he'd just be in my dreams. Around the age of 9, he stopped even being in my dreams. Having grown a strong emotional connection to him, I was very upset, and I thought that I'd gotten him mad. I thought this because often I was annoying my parents, maybe that they'd neglect me. So after about 3 years go by, and I've completely forgotten about him. But on the night of June 3rd, he appeared in my dreams. He wrote out a message saying, "What'll happen soon isn't your fault." When I woke up, I was confused of who he was and what he'd been talking about. I mentioned it later at breakfast to my parents, and they went silent. Then they told me about what happened when I was a baby. I began to remember him. At first, I thought he was just an imaginary friend, but when I remembered the scar in the car accident, I got concerned. I just decided to forget about it. It's been 2 years, and I'm 15. And recently my baby cousin mentioned the man and said that he missed me and enjoys seeing me grow up to be such an independent girl. When she said that, it felt like my heart had stopped. I don't know who he is or why he decided to be like that, almost like a parent to me, and just decided to disappear. And I don't understand if my baby cousin's making things up or if she's telling the truth. I don't know what to do. My dear gentleman, my most fondest memory. I've always believed in ghosts, but most of my experiences were feelings or glimpses of shadows, etc. However, I've gotten more sensitive as I've gotten older, but it seems more so since this incident. My ex and I moved into a little flat in our local town. It was a tiny and squalid little building, but we were in our early 20s and it's our first place. We didn't notice anything funny until after my then-fiancé started getting abusive and we both began noticing this strange energy coming from the bathroom. Due to the layout of the flat, you came in the front door to the living room and kitchen, and where we set up our sofa was opposite the bathroom door. So whenever we sat there, we'd get this odd feeling of being watched, and this strange energy. We closed the door and felt fine, but hated using that bathroom. Over time, things would move. The bookcase that we had was pretty solid and heavy, and it just suddenly tipped over. And the odd one was the kettle kept switching on and off, like someone was flicking the button on and off quickly. 9 out of 10 times it would happen when my ex was gone, but one day it started when I was home alone. Usually I didn't feel frightened at all and just thought I'd make a cup of tea. made two, set one aside, and said, "If you wanted tea, you could just ask for it." From that day onward, the kettle never did the flickering off and on thing again. I only began to feel the scary energy when my ex was home, and as soon as he left, I felt comfortable again. I still sensed him, but not in a negative way, like having a friend or a roommate. I'm not sure why, but I'd start talking to him out loud, just nattering about things, and I learnt about him. Not hearing him per se, but it just came to my head like I already knew it, if that makes any sense. I learned he'd been a soldier in the war and his name was William. The rest of it was just friendly, and I felt such great care and affection from this spirit. I often just referred to him as my old gentleman or lieutenant. My ex, however, referred to him as the Shadow Man or the Dark Entity. A lot of my friends felt the energy, and many non-believers ended up believing in it too, but they didn't seem to get the vibes of friendly or gentleman or evil Shadow Man, just that there was something going on. My ex and I split up, and he ended up moving out for a week, and I'd never lived by myself before, and I thought I'd be terrified more with the spiritual energy, but the whole time I was there, I felt safe and protected, and I hadn't slept so well in years. Unfortunately, I ended up getting kicked out by my ex, and he eventually left the house too, and I regret losing that place, as I greatly miss my old gentleman and think of him often. Since then, I actually did some digging and I learned that in my home, a gentleman did live there until he died in the 70s and 80s. I can't remember the exact age as I searched it up years ago. But he was a former lieutenant in World War I, and he had lived in that building, and his name was William. It reassured me that my memories weren't just a delusion, but it makes me miss the very real connection that we once had. An evil attachment to my mother's remains. I feel like enough time has passed to be able to talk about this. There is a dark, evil attachment to my mom's remains. This evil entity cannot be destroyed, only sealed away. Some may already know what I'm referring to. For those that do not, the entity was a dye book. For those unfamiliar with dye books, they originate from Jewish folklore. It's an entity that was never human. And the longer it's allowed to feed, the stronger it can get to the point where it can kill. Here's some background information. My mom passed away from pancreatic cancer of the liver in early 2018. This was her 5th cancer. Due to where she passed and where she lived, it was cheaper to have her cremated. At the time, I was in the Army, so my sister held on to the remains. After I got out in 2020, I got a place to live. In 2021, my sister and her husband decided to move to Florida to live near his parents due to how they panicked. Or rather, due to how they packed, they were unable to take the remains with them. And so I had to take, for a long time, the writing is inconsistent here. So I had taken them for the time being, since I just lived down the road. At the time, I suspected nothing about the remains. At this time, I had been starting my path as a practicing witch, strengthening my natural abilities. Especially since I could sense spirits but not see them, slowly with practice, I was able to see after images of spirits. In early 2022, I met someone online and started to form a relationship with. In April of that year, I had taken a trip to see how living with them would be. It's when I got back that things went south fast. The night I returned, I was woken up in the middle of the night, and above me was this black mass in the shape of a sphere, dripping darkness. I was terrified. This thing radiated evil. I felt like it wanted to kill me, but it couldn't. The next day, I consulted my friend, who was an experienced witch, and she searched for it. The entity tried to hide from her, and when she found it, it attacked her. My friend was able to confirm that it was, in fact, a dye book. She found that the die book was attached to my mom's ashes and that it had been attached to her for a long time. Looking back, it explained so much. And going through my memories, the townhouse that we moved into when we moved to California felt evil. It's where my mom got her first cancer and where I first started having suicidal thoughts. I remember seeing this darkness at the top of the stairs by my room and by my mom's room. I believe since my mom had more negativity around her, the die book attached itself to her. Since she was raising 2 kids, my dad left her for another woman. He also ruined her credit. And ever since that townhouse, we'd been plagued with misfortune and mishaps, some that nearly killed my mom. After my friend discovered what it was, she gave me a chance and a charm for protection, a temporary one until, the thing was dealt with. And I think it was trying to attach itself to me. We planned for a day to seal it. I believed it was a new moon. Due to my friend being a lot more experienced, her and her partner, who was also a practicing witch, took the reins. I can't go into much detail on what was done, but I can say is that my friend lured it out and her partner sealed it away, creating a die book box. My friend reassured me that it was sealed and cannot hurt anybody anymore, even me. The heaviness that was in my apartment was gone. Shortly after the sealing ritual, my sister asked for the ashes back, while I wanted to bury the box so my family could finally be rid of the demon. But because the ashes were sealed away in the box, I had to send it to her. I did warn my sister not to open the box as the die book wanted to attach itself to our family. I don't know what she did with the box, if she unsealed it to retrieve the ashes or not. She hasn't told me. Since then, I also went into a time of no contact with my sister due to other past issues. So there really isn't a definitive ending to this encounter. His name was Walt. So these experiences I have aren't necessarily mine, but of my parents and older sister, as most of these events happened before I was born. I'm sorry if some of these seem a bit vague on details, but I'm trying to remember as much as I can from the time that I was told these. Some backstory. Walt had lived in our house years prior to us moving in, and he was an electrician and a lover of cats. Both of these are relevant later. And he lived by himself. He loved that house. So when things went wrong, he would fix them, like when the doorbell stopped working. So he went to the basement where the wiring for the doorbell was, and I believe he either had a stroke or a heart attack and fell, hitting his head on the corner table that he had down there, causing him to die. Like I said, he loved that house. He ended up staying after death. Subsequently, every person or family who's moved in after his death would move out around 6 months in. 3 months if he really didn't like them, until my family moved in 1996. I was about to be born the following year. My mom's experience. So my dad was in the Army at the time, and was in for deployment. While my mom was doing dishes, she accidentally damaged her wedding ring. So she put it in a Ziploc bag and placed it in her jewelry box right on top, as she would go to bring it to the jeweler to have it repaired. Come the next morning, and lo and behold, the ring is missing. She completely empties the jewelry box and searches around the room, and it's nowhere to be found. Distraught, but resigned, as there was nothing she could do, a few months pass, and it's getting close for my dad to come home from deployment, and my mom is starting to get worried on what to say to my dad. Then one night my mom's woken up by a strange feeling, and hears a man whisper, "Check your jewelry box." Despite feeling doubtful, she checks, and there on top of everything inside is her wedding ring, still in its plastic bag. The next day, my mom goes out and notices a new jeweler's shop, and she brings it there. because of them being new and they were offering discounted prices to gain new customers. So my mom was able to get the ring fixed and for a cheaper price. My dad's experience. Like I said before, Walt died while trying to fix the doorbell. And all that time, the doorbell was never fixed. So my dad, being the man of the house, tries to fix it, despite not having any experience being an electrician. He takes some tools, a how-to book, and gets right down to it for a few hours. He would call up to my mom to test the doorbell to see if it got fixed, but it wouldn't ring. After some time, the pages on the how-to book began to flip to the page that my dad actually needed. And as he worked, he felt hands on him, guiding him. Till eventually, when he called up to my mom to test the doorbell, she was sort of a humorist at him for the last time. And to both of our surprise, the doorbell worked. When my mom asked how he did it, he told her that he really didn't know what happened, but it felt like he was given help. My mom and dad's experience. When they first moved in, they noticed that some of Walt's belongings were still in the house, so they were able to get in contact with his sister who lived not too far away. The items being a box of personal items in the master bedroom closet and his Leatherman jacket in the mudroom's closet. They gathered items and placed it by the front door, so when Walt's sister came, she wouldn't have to wait for them to get the stuff. And then they went about their day. When Walt's sister arrived, Walt's stuff was no longer by the front door. They searched the house from top to bottom, and the stuff was in their original locations. Neither one of my parents claimed that they did it. My sister, who's only 2, so she couldn't have been able to put that box back onto the high shelf in the master bedroom's closet. When my parents explained what had happened to Walt's sister, she told them that was like Walt, and he didn't like people touching his stuff. Also, that he was a bit of a prankster. Also, this is how they found out it was Walt haunting the house this whole time. My sister's experience, and a bit of mine. My sister could see Walt, and she would have conversations with him often. When my parents asked who she was talking to, my sister would reply with, "The nice funny man." Honestly, that's still kinda creepy. At night is when Walt would really make himself known. You would hear footsteps coming up from the stairs with no one there. Cliché, I know. But you would also hear cats yowling despite there being no cats around. And this was because Walt had a bunch of cats when he was alive. Essentially, crazy cat man. When my sisters would hear this, she would jump out of bed so she could play with Walt. One time, Walt didn't like the PJs my mom put on me. I was like less than a year old at the time, and took them off of me and put them to the side. Me being a baby, not liking the sudden cold feeling, started to cry. When my mom came into the room, she saw my sister laughing and asked her what was going on. My sister replied that Walt didn't like my PJs, so he took them off. Honestly, that horrified my mom, seeing how I was naked, but my sister wouldn't have been able to reach into my crib, as she was too small to do so. And such that would have been the only explanation available. Haunted after deployment. This story happened to me back in 2008. I was a soldier in the U.S. Army, and I had just returned from my first deployment to Iraq. My mom had passed away during the tour, and I was in the process of a divorce, but the unit still made me having a housing off post. I mention these parts because they're relevant to the incident. I was living in an apartment alone, and always had what felt like an irrational fear of the bedroom where I kept my bed. Due to this, I usually slept in the living room on the futon. So, one night I finally decided to sleep in the bed. Turned out that fear was more rational than I thought it seemed. Couldn't fall asleep, and then I remember falling out of the bed, but something cushioned my head. Instinctively, I asked if it was my mom. I knew it wasn't here when I felt pressure on my throat and struggled to breathe. Or rather, I knew it wasn't her. I said, "Nope," and I attempted to flee only to be yanked backwards hard, and next thing I remember sitting upright in my bed thinking it was a nightmare. I took a breath and laid back, noticing it was around 3 or 4 in the morning, and what I saw next made me freeze as I saw a dark figure meld into the wall. Needless to say, never slept there again, and I moved out soon after. I felt pretty sore, so I'm unsure if the attack was a nightmare caused by the figure or if I blacked out and I was just yanked back into the bed somehow. And I would see the figure again when I lived in other places through the years, but usually only when I was living alone and during very stressful times. My true encounters with ghostly presences. It all began when I moved into this old, cozy house in a quiet neighborhood. Little did I know that it held secrets beyond my wildest imagination. From the moment I stepped inside, a peculiar energy enveloped that place, making my skin crawl. Strange things started happening. A flicker of movement from the corner of my eye, unexplained sounds echoing through the halls, and objects seemingly shifting on their own. At first, I dismissed these occurrences as mere figments of my imagination, trying to rationalize them away. But as the days turned into weeks, the activity intensified, leaving me no choice but to confront the inexplicable. Late one eerie night, while lying in bed, the silence broke only by the creaks of the house. I heard it, a whisper, soft and faint, carried by an otherworldly presence. My heart skipped a beat as I strained to catch the words spoken by an unseen entity. Though their voice was barely audible, it seemed to call out my name, echoing with a mix of longing and urgency. Determined to uncover the truth behind these spectral whispers, I delved into the house's history. Countless hours were spent researching, speaking to locals who knew the area well, and poring over dusty archives in search of answers. Slowly, the puzzle pieces fell into place. A former resident who met a tragic end, their spirit lingering in search of resolution. I embarked on a mission to communicate with the unseen entity, to offer solace to their restless souls. Through late-night conversations, I began to understand their pain, the unfinished business that bound them to our world. The encounters continued, growing more intense and tangible. Objects would move of their own accord, doors would slam shut with eerie force, and an icy chill would settle in certain areas of the house. Shadows danced and flickered, seemingly alive with ethereal energy. Though fear gripped me at times, my insatiable curiosity and compassion propelled me forward. I sought the assistance of seasoned paranormal investigators, and together, we explored the depths of the house, armed with various detection devices, hoping to capture evidence of the otherworldly. Our investigations yielded chilling results. Audio recordings that captured disembodied voices, whispers from beyond the veil, and photographs that revealed mysterious orbs of light, their presence defying explanation and sparking wonder. Yet, amidst the chilling encounters, a deep sense of empathy grew within me. I realized that these ghostly beings were not malevolent entities, but remnants of lives once lived. They yearned for acknowledgement and understanding. With careful research and heartfelt conversations, I pieced together fragments of their stories. Each encounter brought me closer to understanding their plan and helping them find the closure they desperately sought. Now, for all you brave Redditors who wish to venture into the realm of the supernatural, I offer you a ritual, a symbolic gesture of connection with the spirits. Light a white candle in a quiet room, close your eyes, and softly speak words of compassion and understanding. Open your heart and mind to the possibility of their presence, acknowledging their existence with respect and kindness. But let me remind you to approach this ritual with caution and respect. The spirit world is a realm we can never fully comprehend, and it is essential to tread lightly and ensure your own safety. So if you ever find yourself face to face with the unexplained, approach it with an open mind and a compassionate spirit. Within those whispers in the night, you might just catch a glimpse of the profound mysteries that surround us all. As my journey with the supernatural entities unfolded, I couldn't help but wonder if there was a way to help them find peace. I sought advice from experts in spiritual practices and discovered a ritual, an amalgamation of ancient traditions and personal intent, which some believed could provide closure for these restless spirits. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, I gathered the necessary items: a bundle of sage, a small vial of blessed water, and a piece of amethyst said to possess protective properties. Taking a deep breath, I entered the most active area of the house, the room that I had felt had the strongest presence. In the dim light, I lit the bundle of sage, letting the fragrant smoke fill the room. With each waft, I visualized negative energy dissipating and a calming aura enveloping the space. I sprinkled a few drops of blessed water around, symbolizing purification and renewal. As the room became infused with the delicate scent of sage, I held the amethyst in my hand, feeling its cool energy grounding me. With a steady voice, I spoke words of compassion and release, addressing the spirits that resided within the house. I acknowledged their pain, expressed my willingness to help, and offered them the freedom to move on from their earthly attachments. A profound stillness settled in the room, as if the very air held its breath. The sensation of being watched eased, replaced by a sense of serenity. Whether it was the power of the ritual or a shift in the spirit's energy, I may truly never know. But in that moment, I felt a gentle, intangible presence. The weight of unresolved emotions lifted, replaced by subtle gratitude. In the days that followed, the paranormal activity gradually subsided. The once restless spirits seemed to find solace and began to fade into the ethereal realm they belonged to. The house, once fraught with their lingering presence, now felt lighter and more peaceful. Reflecting on my experiences, I realized that the ritual was not a definitive solution for every haunting. Each encounter with the supernatural is unique, and finding resolution may require a diverse range of approaches. But the ritual served as a catalyst, an opportunity for understanding and healing to take place. The Tale of Child Ghosts. In a small, sleepy town, nestled amidst rolling hills, there is a dilapidated Victorian house that stood abandoned at the edge of the woods. Locals whispered tales of its haunting, claiming that the house was home to the spirits of children who had met unfortunate fates long ago. Legend had it that a young family had once resided there, their lives filled with joy and laughter. However, tragedy struck when a devastating fire engulfed the house one fateful night, trapping the innocent children inside. The town mourned their loss, and the charred remains of the house stood as grim reminders of the lives lost too soon. Years passed, and the stories of the child ghosts grew more vivid. People claimed to have seen flickering lights and heard laughter emanating from the house. The town's children would dare each other to approach the eerie place at dusk, exchanging spine-chilling tales of encounters with the departed children. One evening, a curious and brave young girl named Emily decided to unravel the mysteries surrounding the house. She had heard tales of whispers among her friends, and her heart was filled with a mix of fear and compassion for the child spirits said to reside there. Emily ventured into the woods, her footsteps careful and deliberate. As the sun began its descent, casting an orange glow over the landscape, she approached the abandoned Victorian house. The creaking floorboards and the overgrown vines clinging to the walls added to the eerie atmosphere. Emily pushed open the rusted front door. Inside, she found a world frozen in time, a place of forgotten dreams and lost innocence. Cobwebs adorned the corners, and dust danced in the rays of light that filtered through the cracked windows. She explored each room, feeling a peculiar presence, a whispered touch of the past. In a forgotten corner, she stumbled upon an old, worn-out teddy bear, its once vibrant colors faded with time. As she picked it up, a soft giggle echoed through the house, and Emily's fear transformed into warmth and understanding. She realized that the child's spirits had never meant to harm. Instead, they longed for connection, for someone to remember them, and for their stories to be told. Moved by compassion, Emily began visiting the house regularly, bringing fresh flowers to place on the windowsill, playing games with invisible companions, and sharing stories of her adventures with the departed children. Over time, the town started to see the abandoned house with new eyes. No longer a place of dread, it became a symbol of resilience, love, and remembrance. The child ghosts, once restless and unseen, found solace in the presence of Emily and the town's growing appreciation for their memory. As years went by, the town transformed the old Victorian house into a community center, dedicated to honoring the lost children and providing a safe space for the living ones. The laughter of children echoed through its walls once again, filling the house with a sense of joy and healing. And so, the child ghosts found peace, forever etched into the hearts of those who had come to know their stories. Their presence served as a reminder that even in the afterlife, the innocence of childhood endures, and the power of compassion can heal even the most lingering ghosts. The dark history and secrets behind St. Agnes. In the small, secluded town of Greenwood, New Jersey, nestled amidst a dense forest and hidden from the prying eyes of the outside world, stood St. Agnes Church. Its weathered stone walls and towering steeple reached for the heavens, a beacon of faith and solace for the townsfolk. But beyond its tranquil facade, a tale of darkness and mystery was woven into the very fabric of the church's existence. Whispered had long circulated among the townspeople about the eerie secrets that lay dormant within the walls of St. Agnes Church. Legends spoke of an ancient burial ground, forgotten by time, upon which the church had been built. Restless spirits were said to roam the sacred halls, their mournful moans echoing through the silent nights and their ethereal forms glimpsed by those who dared to venture there after dusk. Generations had passed down the stories of the church's twisted past, and among the town's eldest residents, tales of a malevolent clergyman named Reverend Barnabas were shared with hushed tones. Revered as a shepherd of souls by day, Reverend Barnabas had an insidious presence that hid beneath his charismatic exterior. Rumors hinted at his involvement in the occult and unspeakable rituals that defied the teachings of the church. According to the age-old folklore, Reverend Barnabas's descent into darkness had been a gradual one, fueled by an insatiable thirst for forbidden knowledge. The dusty tomes of forgotten lore became his refuge, revealing secrets that were better left concealed. The once pure sanctuary of St. Agnes Church became tainted by his perverse curiosity and unholy experiments. Whispers grew louder about the hidden catacombs beneath the church where Reverend Barnabas conducted his sinister practices away from prying eyes. The townsfolk, gripped by fear and curiosity, dared not speak openly of the horrors they believed lurked beneath their very feet. However, as the moon reached its zenith, they would occasionally catch fleeting glimpses of dimly lit candles flickering in the depths, accompanied by distant echoes of agonized cries and the haunting melodies of an organ that seemed to play itself. One fateful night when the ominous storm shrouded Greenwood in darkness, a courageous group of townsfolk banded together, driven by an unwavering determination to confront the malevolence that gripped their beloved church. They armed themselves with crucifixes, vials of holy water, and flickering candles. Guided by their collective resolve, they descended into the forbidden catacombs, the musty scent of age and decay filling the air. What they encountered in those shadowy depths would forever sear their memories and haunt their dreams. The winding corridors revealed rows upon rows of weathered skeletal remains, meticulously stacked as if in a macabre symphony. The feeble candlelight cast eerie dancing shadows upon the ancient bones, illuminating a chamber that seemed to pulse with an evil presence. At the heart of this haunting tableau stood Reverend Barnabas, his eyes gleaming with malevolence and madness. A chilling silence settled upon the brave souls as they stared into the abyss of the Reverend's twisted creation. With a wicked smile that curdled their blood, he beckoned them forward, daring them to challenge his authority and the foundations of their faith. But bolstered by their unwavering belief, they raised their crosses, invoking prayers of protection, and unleashed vials of blessed water upon the unholy abomination before them. The very air cracked with the force of their collective conviction, repelling the malevolent energies that emanated from Reverend Barnabas. Inch by inch, they forced him back, his form growing increasingly distorted and ethereal, until with a final shriek of defiance he dissipated into the shadows, leaving behind a void of darkness that slowly receded. In the aftermath of their harrowing encounter, the townsfolk emerged from the catacombs, their hearts heavy with the weight of what they had just witnessed. With solemn determination, they sealed the entrance of the accursed chambers, entombing the memories of Reverend Barnabas and his blasphemous experiments forever. St. Agnes Church, once tainted by the darkness that had consumed its shepherd, began to heal and reclaim its sanctity. The townspeople, scarred by the horrors that they had faced, dedicated themselves to ensuring that the church remained a sanctuary of light and hope. They scrubbed away the lingering traces of malevolence, replacing them with fresh coats of paint and heartfelt prayers of redemption. Over time, the haunting tales of St. Agnes Church's eerie past transformed into cautionary folklore. Visitors to Greenwood would be regaled with stories of restless spirits that still whispered in the wind and shadows that danced in the moonlight. The townsfolk, ever vigilant, would share accounts of faint organ music that wafted through the night air, a reminder of the evil that had once tainted their beloved place of worship. As the years rolled by, St. Agnes Church became a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of faith to overcome even the darkest of shadows. The townsfolk, though forever marked by the scars of their encounter, found solace in their collective spirit and the bond forged through their shared struggle. Today, the church stands as a beacon of serenity, its doors open to all who seek comfort and guidance. The echoes of its unsettling past have faded, but not disappeared entirely, leaving behind a subtle reminder of the battles fought and the victory of light over darkness. So should you find yourself wandering the winding streets of Greenwood, drawn to the age-old allure of St. Agnes Church, take a moment to listen. Listen to the whispers of the wind that caresses ancient walls. Listen for the soft murmurs of the past that linger in the breeze. For within those whispered echoes, you may catch a glimpse of the resilience and courage that turned a once accursed church into a testament of hope. A reminder that even in the face of the inexplicable, the light of the human spirit can prevail. Witchcraft. The history of witchcraft is a complex and multifaceted subject that spans centuries and cultures. The origins of witchcraft can be traced back to prehistoric times when early humans developed beliefs in supernatural powers and magic. The story of witchcraft, as it's commonly understood today, begins in the 14th century in Europe. During this time, a series of events and cultural changes set the stage for a widespread fear and persecution of witches. These events included the spread of Christianity and the influence of the church, the bubonic plague, social unrest, and the development of witch-hunting manuals. With the rise of Christianity, the church sought to suppress non-Christian practices and beliefs. Pagan traditions, folk magic, and local healers were viewed as threats to the church's authority and were gradually condemned as heresy. The idea of a pact with the devil and the practice of harmful magic became associated with witches. The bubonic plague, which ravaged Europe in the 14th century, intensified the fear and paranoia surrounding witches. People were desperate to find someone to blame for the devastating effects of the plague, and witches became convenient scapegoats. Accusations of witchcraft often arose in times of crisis or hardship. The publication of various witch-hunting manuals such as Malleus Maleficarum, The Hammer of Witches, in 1486, played a significant role in fueling the witch hunt hysteria. These books provided detailed instructions on identifying, interrogating, and punishing witches, leading to an increase in witch trials. The witch trials reached their peak during the 16th and 17th centuries, particularly in regions like Germany, France, Scotland, and Salem, Massachusetts. Accusations were often based on superstitious beliefs, rumors and personal vendettas, or confessions extracted through torture. Witch hunts were conducted by both secular authorities and the church, resulting in torture, execution, or imprisonment of tens of thousands of people, mostly women. It's important to note that the concept of witchcraft varied across different cultures and time periods. In some cases, individuals accused of witchcraft were believed to possess supernatural powers, while in others, they were seen as practicing malevolent magic or engaging in harmful activities. Over time, as the Age of Enlightenment took hold in the 18th century, beliefs in witchcraft and witch hunting began to decline. The witch trials came to be seen as a dark chapter in history, fueled by superstition, hysteria, and misogyny. Modern interpretations of witchcraft focus more on nature-based spirituality, religious practices, and the empowerment of individuals, and they often are referred to as Wicca or modern witchcraft. In summary, the story of witchcraft and its origins are complex, spanning centuries and influenced by various cultural, social, and religious factors. The fear and persecution of witches during the European witch trials were driven by a combination of religious, societal, and economic factors, leading to the tragic persecution of thousands of individuals accused of witchcraft. As the Enlightenment progressed, scientific advancements and rational thinking began to challenge the prevailing beliefs in witchcraft. Scholars and intellectuals started questioning the validity of witch-hunting practices, and laws against witchcraft were gradually repealed. By the 18th century, witch trials had largely ceased in Europe. However, it's important to note that pockets of witchcraft and persecution continued in some regions. For example, in parts of Africa, Asia, and the Americas, indigenous spiritual practices and beliefs were suppressed by colonial powers who saw them as witchcraft or pagan rituals. These acts of persecution were often tied to the colonization and forced conversion of native populations. In the 19th and 20th centuries, there was a revival of interest in witchcraft and the occult, largely influenced by various cultural and intellectual movements. In the late 19th century, figures such as Helena Blavatsky and Aleister Crowley popularized esoteric practices and helped shape the modern occult movement. In the mid-20th century, the emergence of Wicca, a contemporary pagan religious movement, played a significant role in reshaping public perceptions of witchcraft. Wicca, founded by Gerald Gardner in England during the 1950s, drew inspiration from pre-Christian traditions and witchcraft practices, emphasizing nature worship, ritual magic, and the celebration of divine feminine. Wicca and other forms of modern witchcraft focus on personal empowerment, spiritual connection with nature, and practice of magic. They reject the negative stereotypes associated with historical witchcraft trials and instead embrace a more positive and inclusive approach to spirituality. In recent decades, witchcraft has experienced a surge in popularity, particularly in Western societies. Books, movies, and popular culture have contributed to a broader acceptance and understanding of witchcraft, often depicting it as a symbol of female empowerment and alternative spirituality. It's important to note that modern witchcraft encompasses a wide range of beliefs and practices, and not all individuals who identify as witches adhere to the same set of beliefs. Some witches follow specific traditions like Wicca, while others develop their own unique spiritual paths. In conclusion, the story of witchcraft spans centuries and continues to evolve to this day. From its origins in ancient beliefs and pagan practices, to the persecution and trials of the European witch hunt era, the modern resurgence of witchcraft as a spiritual practice, the history of witchcraft reflects the complexities of human culture, belief systems, and the ongoing search for meaning and empowerment.